Hello everybody, my name is Farmer Phil, and in today's video we are testing all the fodder in the yard and getting results. But we're here with Pat from Goldcrop and Cahill, and we're out with the gorilla rape. We're going to see how it has performed, and at the end of the video then we're going to go through all the analysis of everything when we get it back. How the first cut done, second cut, the red clover first and second cut, the whole crop, and the maize uncovered and the covered and the different varieties. So there's a fair bit to digest in it.
We're just here in the gorilla rape, so our metre squared marked out, so we're going to cut that and weight. And so there's going to be 4,000 of these in an acre or 10,000 of them in a hectare. So either or we can work out the yield per hectare here.
Yeah.
So we can say between the silage that's been fed and the rape being fed, we can actually work out. I know you're into the rape already, but we start to work out what the contribution of both is to the animal's diet. Done really well, like, so just to get a measure of it. And then we have the piece that didn't get fertilizer up the top.
Is up at the top,
we can measure that, so you can actually get a economic value of what you put on some protected urea, I think.
Yeah, it was protected urea.
Your father will be able to figure out whether it's actually worth the money or not. So we'll just go ahead and weigh these and cut them and weigh them.
See how it goes.
Hopefully I don't break the shears on the frozen plants.
Saying about the frozen plant is not ideal for the cattle.
The cells in the plant can make the plant too rapidly digestible in the stomach, so it can actually be harmful for the animal. In extreme cases it can cause death, like, you know. So. Yeah. But as I said, look, there's probably coating of snow, it's probably insulating this a bit. Like, the main thing is that they've been on this for a good few weeks, so they're probably well adapted, and then they're getting really dry hay and silage inside, like, so that's all gone into the pot to mix up.
So we'd be better off moving the fence in the evening.
If you could wait till like kind of midday kind of time. Like, it's hard at the moment because it's probably frozen all the time.
Yeah.
But they'd be probably a bit more of a thaw midday if there was Joe might go above freezing for a little bit.
Scales.
5 3/4, 5.75.
5.75 kilos per metre square.
Fresh weight.
5.75 multiplied by 10,000 is 57,500
tons of fresh weight
per hectare.
And then multiply that by 0.12
is 6,900.
That'd be in dry matter. Like, so we'd say the 0.12 is to bring it to take the water. It's probably 88% water. Yeah. So, like, to give the easiest way to fairly compare wet rape with dry silage is to bring them all back to without water. So that's an exceptional yield. Like, maybe there's extra snow on it, maybe it's a bit heavier. Yeah. So maybe we can bring it back to 10% dry matter. Then we put a lot of snow on it. Yeah. So even if you did 5.75 by multiply by 10,000, then multiplied by 0.1. Taken off a 0, so it'll be 5.75. 7 tons. Yeah, 5.75 tons of dry matter. Like. So this was sown in August. Yeah. So that's the exceptional yield. It was like a bag of protected urea.
Yeah, it was a bag of protected urea. It was a 700 kilo bag of protected urea, and he went across it all except for the top 2 runs at the top of the field. So,
like this, we'd want to do that in 2 or 3 other spots. Representative, like,
of the whole field.
So, like, there's obviously 1 or 2 lower points that mightn't have got as much nitrogen and things like.
Yeah. But all in all, it's it's quite a good crop.
Yeah, some of the advantages of the gorilla is, like, you got this really green leaf. So, like, the leaf is going to be more digestible than the stem. But then even the stem, you see, is like, it's not that lignified, it's not that hard, like. Yeah. So you can see here where it's being grazed, they're actually licking it out, like.
Taking it right down to the stem. But
it's what you want, and it's probably actually helping this weather. You know, that there's a bit more fibre in that.
Yeah.
Like. So if they're able to eat that, you know, that's going to help their digestive health as well. Like. You know, the fact that they're grazing it out, because what we measured there was the total. Yeah. You don't want them to leave all the stems behind them. They did leave a share of leaves behind today, but obviously, like, it's challenging enough to graze in these conditions.
So you can see the difference here. We're at the upper end of the field where it didn't get that protected urea. Sap is shorter. So it'll be interesting what the difference is when we get the patch measured out.
The truth now.
Bag is filled now.
That's 4. So
it's 4.
Based on the calculation we used, below 10% dry matter, 10,000 of these in a hectare, that's 4
tons to the hectare.
Of dry matter per hectare. We had 5.7 below, like.
Yeah.
So that's.
So the ton.
Like, we work it out, whether the cost of fertilizer, but even without working it out, I know well that's going to pay off. Like, you know, after growing that much more feed over that much more area. Yeah. So that's paying off, like, you know.
Yeah.
Because he had all the P and K out from this being a good index soil and the slurry, so it's just slurry sometimes isn't that
high in nitrogen.
Rape is like a greyhound. It's really hungry. It'll grow really fast if you feed it. So like we would say for a full crop of rape, you probably want to put in like 4 bags of can equivalent. Like, so
yeah.
You probably only spread 1 in artificial, and the rest came from either the ground or from the slurry.
So we're just testing the red clover. So this is first cut red clover bale, and there's a second cut red clover bale there too. See, is there any difference in them? Would there be much of a difference between first and second cut?
Yeah, it seems that I haven't looked at this one here yet, but it seems this one's definitely a bit blacker, so
yeah.
Fine, there's more clover in it. That, I'd say the grass just got a bit of a jump on the clover.
Yeah.
Starting off can happen. Either the clover gets a jump or the grass gets a jump, and whoever gets the jump at the start is kind of who's there in the first cutting. But you would expect that then, like once the clover got a head start, you can actually see more leaves inside in this. So like I'd expect that this should be higher in protein than that, and you can see that's kind of more yellow, or
yeah.
more like grass. I think there definitely was more clover in it when you caught the second time.
Oh, there definitely was, and yeah, the second time we caught it, there was a good bit of it was in flower.
So like this is typical of what happens with red clover, that you have this kind of blacker silage. No, I'd say there wasn't a huge proportion of. So the last soil test showed that the K was a bit low, so it's probably holding back the clover, doing what it really should do. But yeah, it should give you a taste of what's possible.
I've not picked the best day to film this because it's peeing, but what can you do? As you would have seen, we were out on the last with the gorilla rape with the lads from Goldcrop, and we looked at how it has performed, and it's performed quite well. Telly's down beside the Waylands, so bro is just doing the day feeding while I'm making this video. So we have our results back on all our crops. Our maize is our whole crop, our first or second cut, and our red clover. So while we're beside the pits, we'll go through our silage. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just show it to you, and then we'll go into the shed, because it's just very miserable out here. So our whole crop winter wheat is what it looks like. Lots of grain in it. You can see just how much grain is in it based on all the white specks, because that's all grain cutting too. So it is packed full of grain. Second cut silage then on top of it, which looking the finest. So it is, and that was grouped silage, so it was grouped into rows. I think we lifted it the day after it was grouped, didn't leave it on the ground too long. And our first cut silage over here, same again, not much in the difference, but we're also on last year's silage, so we're just coming into last year's silage on the block there now. And on our silage situation, that block of pit silage there will be out by the end of this month, fully expecting it to be out. Hence we have bringing our bales back to try and stretch out what we have for the Waylands, because they're the ones getting all the silage at the minute. So we'll just go into the shed and we'll tell you how both silages have done, or all that's in that pit has done. I have all my results back, and it has been, what was it, 2 weeks since Goldcrop were here? Goldcrop were here during the big freeze, well, the freeze we had this year. But to get back on subject, we go back, look at our silage pits, the two. We look at our first cut and our second cut. So starting with our first cut, which is to the big chunk on the left, I'm at her 28%, pH of 4.8, ammonia of 6, ash of 8, NDF 50, DMD 69, which is is on the lower side. You would like to see first cut silage being higher DMD than that. Crude protein 13, which is not bad now, especially when you think that our first cut red clover, which you'll see in a minute, was just slightly lower, 0.2 under, which, yeah, it's not bad now. It's not bad at all. So we go on then to our second cut silage, which is basically, it was just the one field and it's above our whole crop. Surprisingly, the dry matter of that is 31%, and that was grouped. So our first cut wasn't grouped, it was mowed out. I don't think we tethered it. I can't remember, did we tether or not? We may have done. Rode up, put in the pit. Second cut was grouped and put straight in the pit the next day. It's 5% drier. pH is 4, ammonia 5. The ash content is 7.5. And ash, what ash content is basically clay and other contaminants that is brought into the silage, usually while tedding and raking. So we can see here that her ash is down 0.5%, on our second cut from our first cut, and that's down to the grouping. And one of the other things with ash content is the higher your ash content, the lower your protein. And as we'll see here, our NDF is 45, our DMD is 73% on our second cut, which is quite surprising, ME of 10, and our crude protein of 13.9, which is quite good. And from what Father Phil told me, for every percentage of ash that's in your silage, your protein goes down by 2%. So we see there, we're down 0.5%, and our protein is nearly up a full percentage over our first cut. So our second cut silage is better silage. And we grouped it. We have lower ash, we have higher crude protein, we have higher DMD, and it's drier, which is all quite surprising for grouping. I can't just remember, we may have had rain while we had it mowed in the first cut, we usually do, but my memory isn't with me at the minute on that. Usually, first cut silage is always better. So we're currently, the bulls, our finishing cattle are getting a bit of silage, so we were feeding them first cut, we've now swapped them back over to second cut because it's the better silage. And this is something that's interesting. What has everyone else that's watching DMDs of your first and second cut been? Talking to a couple of people, and the consensus seems to be second cut silage seems to be coming back better. Talking to a friend of Monaghan, and he says the very same. And one of the things I've heard being mentioned, and the reason why, and I don't know how true it is, dribbling slurry is leaving slurry in the lines, and it's not now this comes down to how the slurry is going off. It's too thick, this is a problem. If it's nice and runny, it's generally not a problem, but that the slurry is contaminating the grass going back in to the pit, and that's why we're seeing this lower DM or DMD. I don't know whether that's true or not. We dribbled both first and second cut, and there's the differences there, so I don't know is there any truth in it or not, but that's what I am hearing. But quite interesting to see there. Second cut silage done better, it's drier, higher protein, lower ash, and we grouped it. Happy days. That is on our silage. So how is your silage tested? Can you see anything like that yourselves between the first and the second cut? And it's the same with our red clover, which we'll look at in a minute. Our first cut red clover come back with a 69% DMD, or 69.5 just about, and our second cut come back with 73.4% DMD. It's the very same with the bales. So well, maybe it was the year. But anyways, we'll move on to our whole crop. So overall, our silage, not too bad. Second cut, definitely better. So our whole crop come back with a dry matter is 62%, which is high, but then that's whole crop. pH of 4.6, ash of 5, NDF of 51, ME, which is its feeding energy value, 11, starch 19, crude protein 11.7. Bro's on his way back in here for some more meal. So Bro's just putting in a day feeder there. So that's how the whole crop done. I don't have the stats from last year, but that's whole crop. We always use it, it always feeds quite well, and the winter wheat works out quite well because it's quite bulky, you get a lot of grain in it. The red clover, how did the red clover perform? It is a field of two halves, it's one way of putting it. As this bale here has red clover in it, but doesn't seem to have a whole lot. First red clover has a dry matter of 45%, pH of 4.5, ash of 8.7, NDF of 50, DMD is 69, which is a bit low. And the big one, crude protein, is like 12.8, which is quite poor, especially for red clover. But it is a field of two halves, and the bale that the sample was taken from was quite possibly from the poor half of the field. Now, when we sowed it, there was one end of the field next to gate, lots of red clover. The furthest corner from the field, near enough no red clover. I remember at the time, people were saying we shouldn't have done it with the spinner, because the spinner, all the red clover seed would go to the bottom and it'll come out first, and that's originally what I thought might have happened. But when we look at it closer, the way we sowed it was we kept going around and around and around and around, and if that was the case, if the clover seed had to come down and come out first, the very middle of the field will be the poorest for clover, which is not, it's just a very far corner. First and second cut weren't over hectic. We thought we should have had more bales. Goldcrop come back down to do some more soil sampling, because originally it was soil samples all across the field. Come back with, I think it was an index 3. Pretty good soil, didn't need a whole lot, happy out. But when they done spot sampling in the corner that was the poorest, it come back that it was very low in K, and red clover needs quite a lot of K. So that's why there's not a lot of red clover up there, and they think that could be why our yield has been poor enough and the protein content of our bales isn't as good as it should be. So our second cut red clover, which is what we were looking at just there in that bale, it come back dry matter 38%, so a little bit wetter but still very dry. Very happy with that, come back lovely and dry. pH 4.7, ammonia 9, ash 9, so it was a bit higher on the ash this time. NDF 46, DMD 73% DMD, so it was quite good. Dry DMD, ME 10, and crude protein of 14.9, so nearly 15%, which isn't too bad, but it still should be higher than that. So we think that's what's wrong. What other interesting things that's on this results we got back is you can see the predicted performance with good management on weanland should be 0.3 kilos a day on the first cut. On the second cut it should be 0.4. Quite interesting that. But that's how the red clover done. So it wasn't as good as it should have been, but it just boils down to we need to put out so extra K to try and boost the K in the field, and that should bring on the red clover, and we should hopefully, when we get that done, see an improvement in it in the next couple of cycles of harvesting. Be interested to see how the cattle perform on it now that we have them on it, as we're feeding away here on bales, because the pit of silage, as we'll see, or you would have seen, is very low. So this other bale we have here, that's the red clover. This here is our what's the best way to put it? Our grouped silage. So if some of you remember, I went on a bit of a mowing spree and I grouped a heap of grass and we baled it all up, and this is what that silage is. So this is grouped, left for 3 days on the ground, and it is very nice. The smell test smells lovely. See how much water is in it? Nothing. So that's 3 days left grouped, and the way I done it was with the grouper I can leave a row in the middle and 2 rows either side, so I was given a maximum width just to see how it would do, because the reality of it is it's going to save a farmer a few pounds per bale, because you don't have to go back with the rake, and it also saves us as a contractor time if you can group the silage in front of bale, specifically paddock bales, which this would have been. It's a lighter leafier kind of a grass, because it just leaves it that little bit easier for everyone, especially when bale numbers on paddocks don't normally be too hectic. It's turned out very well, and unfortunately we didn't get any samples of it taken, see how it has actually done, but very happy with it. Come back lovely and dry for only grouped 3 days on the ground and then baled up. Very happy with it now. So on the Gorilla rape, which we started the video out with Goldcrop, they took the samples and we've seen how it done, and we've seen that we've quite an exceptional crop. It's been very good, and we've seen that the difference between what got fertilizer and what didn't was 1.7 tons to the hectare, and that was at a cost of, we put out, it was a 750 kilo bag of protected urea. So I can't do the maths on it, but it paid to put it out. Basically it did pay to put out the urea on the ground to push on that crop. Goldcrop have sent us back how it's feeding, what percentages we're feeding, and that. We're in the field at 168 meters of a strip up and down, and then we're giving them about 2 meter inward strip is 0.0366 hectares per day. Multiply that by the yield of 5.5 ton per hectare, means that we allocate a grill of 184 kilos of dry matter a day. That's 1 kilo of rape per head daily on this measurement. That's roughly what we're feeding at the minute, is 1 kilo of rape per head, and that's based at the conservative estimate of 10% dry matter. So working it the other way around, we're feeding the cattle about 1200 kilos of silage at 33% dry matter is 400 kilos. We're feeding 2 bales of silage at the minute, and we're saying that there's 200 kilos of dry matter in the bales. This all gets quite confusing now. Percentage dry matter is how dry the crop is, and then if you have a ton, let's say a ton for argument's sake, and that is 30% dry matter, then you have 300 kilos of dry matter. It may weigh a ton, but you've 700 kilos of water. You have 300 kilos of dry matter. So at 2 bales is 400 kilos of dry matter. So total silage is 800 kilos of dry matter. So it's 4.4 kilos per calf. Adding the gorilla estimates onto that and taking it that the calves are 200 kilos. So if the estimates are, if Goldcrop's estimates are right, we're currently feeding 80% silage, 20% for gorilla rape. In the heel of the hunt, we can easily feed more rape to the cattle, to the weanlings, without getting in risk of things like bloat and other digestive upsets from feeding a high rape diet. So we're very happy. We'll increase the amount of rape we're feeding to cut back on our silage use. As you've seen, we are starting to get quite low, and we are expecting to be out of pit silage by the end of January. We're going to try and balance things out, but we have till around the middle to end of March before the rape starts to go to flower, and when it goes to flower, it's poisonous cattle off it, and if there's anything left, we'll have to destroy it, not let it go to seed. All in all, it's done quite well, and it's doing our job, saving us in silage, and we're quite lucky we did put it in. 2 more crops to look at, the beet and maize. So this is the beet we got pulled the last day we were out. We're feeding away to 1 pen of cattle, just to keep 1 pen of bulls, keep them going. So this is the middle of the field, what the beet looks like. Small hard beet, that's one thing it is. Beet, was what I was told, was it's generally very consistent in its feeding quality all the time, and the rule of thumb is that beet is used 23% dry matter and rolled barley is 85%. So 4 ton of beet to 1 ton of barley is what it equates to. And if you're looking at the costings of growing your crop of barley and the yields of that versus the cost of growing this and the yield of beet, beet is a cheaper, more efficient crop than barley. But the problem is, as you see with our beet, it's not as easy got out of the ground, and you only have 1 option. Well, you have 2. You can graze it in the field, you either graze it or you pull it. Whereas a crop of barley, you can whole crop it, you can crimp it, you can cut it dry, you have a little bit more option. But yeah, so that's the beet. There's not much more to say on it. Our meager little pile, hopefully we'll get back to the field sometime, but with this rain, it's not gonna happen anytime soon. That's the rule of thumb with beet. 4 ton of beet to 1 ton of barley. It still works out cheaper to grow beet than it does barley, but how things work out that way is up for debate. So our uncovered maize pit still not opened. I'm going back into the shed now because it's miserable out here. Still not open, but there is something quite interesting in our results between the 2 crops. Our covered maize, I need to tidy it up now, but this is our maize. Looks, smells fantastic. Our barrier sheet doing a lovely job keeping right. I have to tidy that up. One of the things you will notice is it's not a very clean pit face, and the problem we're having is the starlings seem to be able to come in and then pull apart the pit face and make it look raggy like that, because you can see where the last grab come out, but the starlings are making a bloody nuisance of it. But anyways, we'll go into the shed. I have to tidy that up once I get finished here. That's my next job. Then the job after that is start cleaning out sheds. Anyways, so our uncovered maize with 2 varieties sown in it. We had Feedy Top and Foxtrot. So our Feedy Top sample come back. We had this Feedy Top, yeah, dry matter of 35.6%, pH 3.7, ash 3.6, NDF 41, ME 11.9, starch 30.3%, which is quite good, crude protein 6.2, and remember the crude protein for later. Our Foxtrot come back with dry matter at 35.2%, pH 3.6, ash 3.3, NDF 43, ME of 11.7, starch 27.5%, and crude protein of 5.8. So there's not a lot in the difference between them. The yield of that field was 11.5 ton on a, trying to remember now, on a 1/4 hectare fresh weight, done 46 ton to the hectare fresh weight. When it came to the uncovered, here are the pigs there in the background. When it come to our uncovered maize, which unfortunately I wasn't around, they didn't weigh a load, so I don't know what the yield was, but our yield would have been back because of the damage the crows done, and also the samples they took, they marked them A, B and C, and I don't know which varieties they were. So unfortunately, I don't know. Yeah, it's when you're not around. On the first sample they took, I'll give you the main ones. The dry matter was 24%, the starch was 28.7 and ME was 11, but the crude protein was 9.1. On the second sample they took, the dry matter is 32%, the ME is 11.5, the starch is 25%, crude protein 7.6. And on the final sample they took, the dry matter is 26%, the ME is 11.5, the starch is 25.8, and the crude protein is 8.9. So, one of the varieties was ripe, the other two varieties weren't just as ripe. Crude protein, as you would have seen there, is quite a bit higher than the covered maize, with 9.1, 7.6 and 8.9. Why the reason is for that, I don't know. In the heel of the hunt, the main thing you grow maize for is its starch content, which is its ability to put fat on cattle. So the average starch content of the covered maize is 28.9%. The average starch content of the uncovered maize is 26.4%. So the difference between the two crops is 2.5%. And the cost in that got the very same treatment from sowing to finishing. The only difference is the plastic, and the plastic costs, the figure I have here is €150 an acre, which it could be a bit higher or maybe lower, but the cost I have down here is €150. It's around that mark for the plastic per acre, which we can no longer use anyways. But so for €150 you could say we got a 2.5% increase in starch. So is it worth it? That is the debate. Next year we have 12 acres marked out for going into maize, which is where the cattle are grazing on the rape at the minute. And our plan is to put in half and half, half covered, half uncovered again, just to see how it goes. Back our horses both ways. And we do have plastic to use up from last year and the year before, but the days of using plastic, as everyone knows, are near enough over. Whether biodegradable works well enough or not, and it's an increased cost, it's, I think the figures I heard was 50% more expensive than traditional plastic. So with the uncovered, I'm quite happy with how it's done. We were lucky with how it went this year for us with the heat wave in August, that crowned it. But hopefully if things go better for us next year, we'll get both in and around the same time and see how they both progress. It'll be interesting, but I am happy with how the uncovered maize is. So that is it. Overall, that is all the sampling done. We didn't take any samples on our beans and our oats and our barley, how they performed, and I didn't get any on our own paddock bales of silage. But that's all in all what we're feeding to the cattle. That's how everything tested. The first bulls are going in the morning to the factory, and then there's another load going next week. So I'm going to film them both going, and we'll see how they've done compared to other years. This year we are fully self-sufficient on the farm. No meal, no biscuit meal, no nothing being bought in to feed our cattle except for minerals. But we'll have to see what the trade-off is in doing it ourselves, and then the difference in weight gains. And I'll also, for the next video when we go seeing how the bull's done, the first to go to the factory, I'm going to put a cost per head per day of what it's costing to feed the bulls on a fully self-sufficient ration. I'm going to let out bulls now, clean them all out. We're going to leave it at that for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it, and big thanks to Goldcrop for working with us this year on our crops. It started with the maize, but have progressed into quite a few different projects. Projects that we're looking at next year is putting in a multi-species sward with antimalentic plants to see can we help solve a bit of our worm burden problem in our calves. So that's something you can keep an eye out for next year. But big massive thanks to Goldcrop for sponsoring the video and helping us out this year with all the crops and working with them. If you want to learn more about Goldcrop and the varieties of which they sell, I'll leave a link in the description to their website so you can have a look there. But anyways, we're going to leave it at that for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Bit of a talky video, but hope you enjoyed it all the same. And anyways, that is it from me. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Videos every Tuesday, Thursday and Sunday. Good luck.